Carnival, a Christian tradition originating in the early 15th century, was an annual event where people would paint their faces, be jubilant, and feast prior to Lent, a stringent Christian observance involving prayer, repentance, and fasting, among other examples of sacrifices to replicate Jesus Christ's journey into the desert for 40 days. The Jubilee was, for all intents and purposes, an excuse for excess prior to Lent. The word carnival still retains some of its connotations, such as mask-wearing, amusement parks, and the like. The modern-day equivalent of the Middle Ages carnival is Mardi Gras, a New Orleans tradition that nowadays is commonly untethered to religion, but still expresses some of the same modes of celebration as Carnival did 400 years ago. You're probably asking yourself at this point, what could this possibly have to do with Super Mario Bros. 2? The outlier, the black sheep, very different and sometimes maligned, practically adopted. No, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about Super Mario Bros. 2. The only Mario game to feature a plucking mechanic, as well as not being able to outright kill your armless foes with a mere stomp on the head. But the game wasn't originally a Mario game. Actually, it was something stranger. An idea by Kensuke Tanabe, a programmer partnered with Nintendo's in-house development team, took the concept of side-scrolling and said, "What if we made a game where players ascended and descended vertically?" Well, he didn't really posit that specifically, but you get the idea. He actually was quoted saying, "The idea was that you would have people vertically ascending, and you would have items and blocks that you could pile up to go higher, or you could grab your friend that you were playing with and throw them to try and continue to descend." The vertical scrolling gimmick wasn't enough to get us interesting gameplay. See, I wasn't actually too far off. This remark also confirmed the intention of 2 players as well, but alas, we never got the chance to see Toad chuck Mario off a cliff. What could have been? The concept was put on the back burner and could have stayed that way, but Fuji Television, a Japanese television network founded in 1957, and the largest in Japan, had created an event to promote their fall lineup of TV shows for 1987. This event derived directly from Carnival. Some higher-ups at Fuji TV had seen the Carnival in Brazil and decided this would be the perfect outlet in Japan to advertise their new shows. Mascots were created to better put a face, or faces, on the event. Imogen, Lena, Mama, and Papa. The design of these characters conveyed an Arabian theme, though there's not much information as to why this theme was chosen. With pockets deep with yen, Fuji TV orchestrated a mass celebration in the spirit of Carnival called Yumi Kojo. This translates to English as Dream Factory. Yume Kojo came across more as a parade than a carnival, but the gleeful mass didn't get lost in translation. Live bands performed, raffles for prizes, and of course commercials aired to advertise the occasion. 2 events, in both Osaka and Tokyo, happened simultaneously in the summer of '87. It was full steam ahead for Fuji TV. Word spread quickly, and the carnival drew in massive crowds in both major cities. Prior to the actual event, Fuji TV approached Hiroshi Yamauchi, then president of Nintendo, about licensing the Dream Factory mascots into a Famicom game. Nintendo agreed, and at some point Kensuke Tanabe was approached to design this collaborative effort. Tanabe had recalled his previous concept, and thought it an appropriate foundation for this Dream Factory game. Shigeru Miyamoto was consulted throughout the project, and more side-scrolling elements were implemented. The game itself was designed not for the Family Computer System, but for its ill-fated external hardware add-on, the Famicom Disk System. Using a proprietary disk format, games oftentimes were larger in scope due to the larger memory capacity, and also allowed for improved sound. Fully titled Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic, translates as Dream Factory Heart-Pounding Excitement, and was fully fleshed out as a story within a book. a storybook detailing the land of Mu, where the good dreams meant good weather and the bad dreams meant poor weather. The people of Mu invented a dream machine that guaranteed them to have good dreams so the magical Mu stayed vibrant and sunny. An evil toad named Mamu invaded Mu and reversed the dream machine to produce nightmares. The people of Mu eventually learned of Mamu's weakness to vegetables and soon defeated him. This book had come into the possession of an Arabian family consisting of Mama, Papa, Imogen, and his girlfriend Lena. This fairy tale is then given to a set of twins, Pokey and Peaky. In a sibling-related spat, the last page was accidentally torn from the book. In the tussle, both twins are pulled into the pages of the story, captured by the evil Mamu, now freed from the written ending. The family's pet monkey, Rusa, alerts the family, and it's up to the four of them to rescue the two children. Each of the four characters have unique stats and/or abilities. Imogen is the all-around character, sporting average movement speed and jump height. Lena has slower movement and lesser jump height, but can float if the jump button is held. Mama has decent movement and the best jump height with floatier mechanics. And last, but kind of least, is Papa, who has the fastest movement but the lowest jumps, though he can pluck items up quicker than his companions. Unique mechanics were added to fully realize the game, as well as themes to connect it to the Yume Kojo festival. Vegetables riddle the tops of the land, ripe to be plucked and thrown at enemies such as Shy Guys, Birdos, Pokies, and Bob-ombs. When plucking a lamp, it can be thrown to open a doorway leading into the nightmare version of the landscape, where vegetables become coins to spend on a lottery at the end of each level, and if the doors are opened in the right vicinity, hearts will appear, giving the player an extra hit against enemy attacks. The end of each level is completed by entering the mouth of a festival mask. More masks were also integrated into the game, such as masks to be thrown like vegetables, or a mask that chases you as you try to retrieve a key. One type of mask in particular resembled blackface, and was later changed when the game was ported to the West to avoid controversy. And it's at this point I'm sure you're aware that Doki Doki Panic soon became an altered Super Mario Bros. 2. The how is plain to see, but the why is a little more complicated. Why? Why didn't Nintendo just make a proper sequel to their highly successful Super Mario Bros.? Spoiler alert. They did. The first game was so popular, Nintendo decided they wanted a port of it in the arcades in Japan. Shigeru Miyamoto was up to the task, and transplanted the game into an arcade PCB. Tweaks were made, however, to ensure players familiar with the home game couldn't reap the rewards of playing through the entire game on a quarter, or the Japanese 50 yen coin. Levels were changed here and there to increase the difficulty, and 6 new, generally harder levels were added. Miyamoto took a sense of pride in the skill required to play these new levels, and witnessed a craving for it after the arcade port of Super Mario Bros. Was released, titled Versus Super Mario Bros. So when Nintendo came to him to make a sequel to his smash hit game, he was intrigued with the concept of increased difficulty, but unable to fully realize it as he was busy working on The Legend of Zelda. So the work fell to his assistant, Takashi Tezuka, and Super Mario Bros. 2 became his directorial debut. This idea of increased difficulty persisted as Tezuka carried on Miyamoto's vision. Feeling that Japanese players had mastered the original game, the next evolution line expounding on the challenging aspects of the first game. With tighter jumps, more enemies, weather effects such as wind, and poison mushrooms to boot, the game released in Japan on June 3, 1986 for the Famicom Disk System. Turnaround on development was quick. A lot quicker than it took Miyamoto to design and program his next hit in The Legend of Zelda, but it still was the second game released for the Disk System add-on, just behind Zelda. Super Mario Bros. 2 was financially successful, very much so, selling approximately 2.5 million copies, though it was met with a large share of criticism for its steep spikes in difficulty. Graphically, it was virtually the same as the first Mario, and many people in Japan took notice of this, some going as far as to posture the game was merely an expansion of the original. In comes Howard Phillips, Nintendo of America's personable video game tester and public spokesman. Phillips got his start as a worker in the New York warehouse for Nintendo in preparation for the US launch of the NES. He soon rose through the ranks to become Nintendo's product analysis manager, responsible for personally quality testing every new Nintendo-produced NES game.
Will you be the one to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot, batteries not included. He helps you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt or action-packed Hogan's Alley and high-flying Kung Fu, each sold separately? Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System? Comes with Rob, Zapper, Control Deck, 2 controllers, Gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
Minoru Arakawa, son-in-law of Nintendo President Hiroshi Yamauchi and President of Nintendo America, found Howard Phillips to be an adept example of American tastes and good spokesperson for the company's image moving forward as they gained steam in North America. Nintendo was cavalier in how titles were given to Phillips. An inconspicuous box directly from Japan would arrive on his desk periodically. He would have no foreknowledge of what games he'd be getting, but was tasked with testing them. Many were Japanese games, prior to localization, given to him to gauge if they would resonate with Americans the way they did overseas. On one particular day, Phillips recalls going through a box and finding a copy of Super Mario Bros. 2 in the pile of games. Both surprised and elated, Phillips slides the disc into the Famicom disk system and started the game up. Briskly going through the level, he jumped underneath each successive question mark block and ran to chase after the mushroom that had popped out of one of them. It was a poison mushroom, and it had instantly killed him. Phillips continued and was dismayed by what he was experiencing, and later quoted as saying, "As I continued to play, I found more and more that Super Mario Bros. 2 asked me again and again to take a leap of faith, and that each of those leaps resulted in my immediate death. This was not a fun game to play. It was punishment, undeserved punishment. I put down my controller, astonished that Mr. Miyamoto had chosen to design such a painful game. This decision to take the fun, brisk pace of the first game and amp it up as more of a dare to more devoted players confounded Phillips. He went on to say, there were things in the Japanese Super Mario 2 that made it not so palatable. At the time, I didn't really know if Miyamoto had driven these changes or not, and it made me question whether he had just lucked out to begin with. So when he talked to Nintendo of America President Minoru Arakawa, he couldn't do anything but explain that this game would not sit well with American consumers. Visuals played a role, or a lack of changed visuals, and the difficulty sealed the deal. Arakawa took Phillips seriously and valued his input. He stayed silent and agreed with Phillips's evaluation. Arakawa then brought this to his father-in-law's attention, describing the situation from the Western point of view. The time is approximately midsummer 1988, and Nintendo hoped to have the sequel shipped to North America in time for Christmas. This internal review threw a wrench in these plans. And now this intercontinental jigsaw puzzle's pieces start to fall into place. Nintendo's R&D team, headed by Shigeru Miyamoto himself, was left holding the bag. Do they rush and make a new sequel in time for Christmas '88? Details regarding this part of the story seem to be more unreliable, but one can assume meetings were held, with input from all those involved directly. Sometime soon, it was decided the best route was to take an already established game, not released in North America, and rework it to be a sequel to Super Mario Bros. This would be both cost-effective and would allow them to polish it up to meet this tighter timetable. Yumikojo Doki Doki Panic was chosen as the saving grace for Nintendo's Western aspirations, or at least their Christmas sales figures. I I can't help but imagine Kensuke Tanabe had a role to play in making the proper alterations. It had now been around a year after the Yume Kojo 87 festival, and it had apparently not warranted in 88, and the game soon fell from Japan's public view. Work began on replacing the character sprites. Imogen became Mario. Lena became Princess Toadstool. Mama became Luigi. And Papa was reworked as Toad. Then less obvious changes took place. The exit points for levels were altered from carnival masks to mythological hawk heads. Blackface masks were changed to Koopa shells. Mechanically, the mainstay run button from the original Mario was added, where such a tool had been absent. Many enemies remained and became quickly folded into the mythology of Mario, such as Shy Guys, Birdo, and Bob-ombs. One Carnival holdover is the golden masks that watch over the keys to locked doors. The story was retooled as well. The environment became known as the Subcon. The evil toad Mamu was changed to Wart. And the rescuing of Pokey and Peaky became a simple freeing the people of Subcon from Wart's rule. Along with it all being a dream Mario was having. Yes, a dream. None of it was real. The conversion worked, and majority of American consumers were none the wiser.
It may be the most addictive toy in history, and it's definitely the hottest thing this Christmas. Nintendo video games. They first arrived from Japan 3 years ago, and now millions of American kids are hooked and mesmerized. When they do stop to talk, it's in a language only they understand. Well, John Stossel went out to discover the secret of Nintendo's success, but first he had to find one.
New York City, early in the morning. Before the toy stores open, they're lined up outside. I'm in line, too, because the director of 2020 said, "Stossel, I hate to ask, but you've got to help me get my kid a copy of Super Mario Brothers 2. This man came all the way from Indiana to get one. He came 1,000 miles just for this game?
Yes. I've done 7 stores a day for 3 weeks now. I cannot find it.
I have to live with my kids for the rest of the year, so I have to have this on Christmas Day.
So to please the kids, they line up at the few stores that have been able to get copies of the hottest Nintendo games, Mario 2 and The Adventure of Link.
I have Super Mario Brothers 2.
Now, what's Nintendo, you ask, and why should you care? Well, I think it's something you should know about because it's captured America's children. School bus drivers report the kids are talking less about clothes and sports and what Joe did to Jane, and more about...
When you get to those things that go up and down, you just jump on them.
After school, even on the day that brings the first beautiful snowfall of the season. Everyone's eager to get inside the house so they can rush to get to the television set. Now, usually they don't play together. We invited them to a Nintendo party. They pop the cartridge into this deck, which attaches to any television set. These controls direct the characters. Popular are the adventure games like Super Mario. They tend to have ludicrous plots. Mario is an Italian plumber who, under your control, enters the Mushroom Kingdom to fight off killer turtles and deadly ducks until he can rescue the Princess Toadstool. The kids love it.
What's good about it?
Birdo. He shoots the eggs out of his nose. And also there's this part where you can't go anywhere except for fall down a pit, but you pick up this thing and this rocket appears out of nowhere and it flies to another board. It's weird.
Super Mario Bros. 2 sold over 10 million copies and was the third highest selling NES game ever at the time. Stores such as Babbage's and Toys R Us couldn't get enough stock to meet the demand, and almost all stores were sold out prior to Christmas.
In the U.S., it's mostly Mario that they want.
The last Super Mario Brothers 2 was just sold. Can they get upset? Well, they say, "Oh, can you take my name? Can you take my credit card, please? Can you do something? My kid wants it."
Super Mario Bros. 2 USA was a peculiar game, but only because it has a complicated history. It is routinely overlooked in the scheme of Mario fandom, but its relevance can still be seen today. It was the first and one of 2 games to feature Toad as a playable character outside of specialty games such as Mario Kart. Princess Peach often retains her floating ability in games such as the Smash Bros. Series and Super Mario 3D World. Unique character attributes between the Mario characters are still around, and the enemies have been carried over to numerous other Mario titles. I personally hold Super Mario Bros. 2 USA in a high regard as my favorite of the 2D Mario titles. It is just something out of the norm. It upends the convention of the Mario gameplay formula we've come to know. P.S. Toad is the best.
bizarre new weapons.
You're throwing things that I've never even discovered in this game.
Yeah,